In the world of medicine, where every decision can change lives, your peace of mind is crucial. This is where Pattern steps in. Imagine insurance made simple, fast, and personalized, just for you. With Pattern, you're not just getting disability and life insurance, you're insuring your future and protecting your greatest asset, your income. In the past 10 years, Pattern has transformed the way over 20,000 doctors secure their financial well-being. Discover the simplicity of securing your future at patternlife.com or click the link in the description. How can training as a coach help you in other aspects of your life? Find out in today's podcast episode. Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, we have a super special guest. We have Dr. Jeff Smith, who is a physician podcaster himself. And actually, the material that he covers, I'm sure all of you would love because it's very, very similar to mine. And in fact, I probably wouldn't have started my own podcast if I had heard his at the time, because we really think very similarly about how to be the best version of yourself. He's a practicing orthopedic traumatologist and a professional certified coach. He has more than 1,000 hours of one-on-one surgeon coaching experience and 500 plus hours of International Coaching Federation accredited coach training. And with over 20 years of experience with academic and private healthcare systems, he's developed his own system to cope with the ups and downs of being a performance-driven surgeon, managing episodes of burnout in a demanding career. And through his personal experience and studies, he developed the 8 practices, and practices is an acronym, of highly successful surgeons, a coaching methodology that addresses communication, leadership, time and life management, and more. And you can find him on the Surgeon Masters blog, and he's the host of the Surgeon Masters podcast, Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More in 10 minutes or less. So, Dr. Smith, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for the great introduction. I appreciate it and look forward to having a great conversation with you and your audience.
You mentioned something earlier that I was a little taken aback by, and you said you were an okay athlete. I didn't know that you could get into orthopedics being an okay athlete. I thought there were some requirements there. Like one of the reasons I didn't even, do a rotation in orthopedics is I thought I would be required to watch SportsCenter and be able to talk about organized sports in an educated way.
Went to orthopedics was because I had this perception that they were all jocks, that, you weren't really a doctor, you just were a technician. And I learned that it's a much more diverse field. But, maybe it's you're either have to be a jock or you have to be injured as an athlete. And I did that a couple times.
Yeah, so people have preconceived notions about orthopedic surgeons, right? That's what we were just talking about. And I would think that like a traumatologist is like the orthopedist of the orthopedic surgeons. But then you've got coaching. And I would think people have preconceived notions about coaching being like woo-woo and touchy.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of us now running our own physician coach training is that we don't put people through that. But, you learn a lot sometimes when you're out of your comfort zone. But the juxtaposition is that I've always been a person that has cared a lot about our field and what we're doing. And, I was seeing non-orthopedic surgeons. I was seeing surgeons in the lounge that in their 40s and saying they were going to call it quits. And I was like, how do you stop clinical practice that young? And so I was also motivated to serve, just like all of us are. We're motivated to serve our patients. And I felt very motivated to serve our colleagues. In the end, what I wasn't aware is how much I was serving myself. And so I became increasingly more aware that, oh, wow, like this was a potential exit strategy, but this is actually your potential stay in strategy, because you're actually going to start paying attention to your own interests and needs. And a lot of that for me was in the well-being or wellness space or in the burnout prevention space. But even when I got very into learning those concepts, appreciating those concepts, I still felt like I want to serve the entire population. I don't want to be a burnout specialist. I want to be someone who helps everyone perform their best. And that really is the model that we try and promote, that it's not woo-woo. It's not counseling. It's not giving people a bunch of advice, and it's not remedial. So, people might come to a coach either by pressure from someone where it is or feels mandated, or it feels remedial. But when you tap into the fact that all of us are really motivated to do the best we can in general, then all it is tapping into the right motivation, which is usually not pressure from someone else. It's actually the internal drive that we have in ourselves.
Makes sense. So what are some of those things that you learned? Like you were out to help other people and ended up helping yourself. So, you'd mentioned some of the ergonomic stuff with radiculopathy. So, wellness from a technical standpoint, but, what are some of the other things?
Many of the things that people talk about and think about, but they don't really put into action. So the cool thing about coaching is it becomes the ingredient that becomes the action because you have an ally or supporter in that progress. But it ranges from, setting boundaries, and what my boundaries are might be very different from yours. My progression in boundary setting might be very different than another person. And in coaching, what most of the programs that I think are out there, but certainly the one that I went through and the one that we do is you should be walking the walk. When I coach somebody, a lot of times they'll act or say, you're just so much better at this. And they go, you don't really know my life. I don't put my whole life out on, in the public. I'm not any better than you. I'm just in my own progression, and I'm a better version of myself than my previous version. And that's true in so many different skills, whether it's boundary setting, time management, communication, and even self-care, right? And, wellness is a huge, broad topic. I actually think that wellness can be all-inclusive, but, some people define that more as well-being. I think the definitions do matter, but I think a lot of times in our audience, we're arguing over the definition of the topic when we should just be applying what we're learning from it. And coaching does that.
Leading a medical practice is challenging. There can be reimbursement changes, referral slowdowns, staff turnover, or drama. There are obstacles in the way of achieving your goals, or maybe it feels like you've hit a plateau. Who can you turn to for help with the business of managing a medical practice? The Physician Growth Accelerator, a private practice partner that helps you uncover and overcome constraints in your practice. They will check your business vitals, identify the root cause of what's restricting your growth, prescribe what to do about it, and help you achieve it, just like we do with our patients. Imagine your practice, where stress is reduced, profits increase in both patients and staff, and you are happier. They've been making that vision a reality for over a decade. Isn't it time your practice thrived? Discover how at physiciangrowthaccelerator.com. It's like just the lens of self-improvement in general. That is what really helped you. It's like, I am just striving to be each day a little better version of myself. I'm going to work on this one or two things right now, and then I'm going to identify something else that I want to work on and then work on that next. Like that's
so helpful is because it's adaptable to the coach and the client.
Do you ever find people that end up being sent to you like in a remediation type setting that are resistant to that mindset?
Remedially introduced, the more human nature is to protect ourselves, and therefore it creates the block and interferes with the motivation. And if it motivates, it sometimes creates a short-term result. So if you can tap into a more positive experience, even in the introduction, then a person is more likely to get to that place. I would say certainly when someone's referred in that way, there's always the risk that they're just not amenable to coaching. I would probably argue that they're just not amenable to coaching yet.
That makes sense. Well, I think there's this concept of psychological reactance, which is, if you're told to do something, you're much less likely to do it, even if you wanted to do it. So like, oh, I find out that my scores are pretty low with patient satisfaction. Maybe I should do something about it. Oh, Dr. Block, you have to go into remediation and work on those patient satisfaction. Now I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to listen to you. So yeah, that sounds about right. I guess you have to find that internal locus, that internal motivation that the person has for something they want to work on that maybe is adjacent to what they need to work on, and kind of find a mutual path forward.
It's very applicable to turning that around into how you interact as a leader, how you interact with your leaders, how you interact with your patients, colleagues. It's a very universal skill. And obviously there's people that have, spent their whole career on it. I'm not that level of expertise, but it's like everything else. That's something that you just continue to practice and you get better and better. The other skill that I think is very helpful in coaching is delivering and receiving feedback. And so in a lot of it's not just constructive feedback. We don't even like the language, what you can do better. Now, you may be motivated to be better. That's fine. But a lot of the times it's not an issue of whether you do something better or not. It's a matter of whether you're doing them differently. And is what you're doing differently more effective in what you're trying to accomplish? So when you help people appreciate how to deliver and receive feedback, and you do that a lot in a coaching relationship, is you're providing a perspective that they get to take it or leave it. And when you take as much judgment out of that feedback as possible, then you're doing it in a very effective way. There's other tons of things that we talk about in the feedback space, and we teach in coaching about, people are more receptive to the feedback that they've actually asked for. So if they're not asking for feedback on something, then it's not necessarily the greatest feedback or timing to be giving that feedback. But if you're a coachee and you say, hey, this is what I want to do, then I, as a coach, might say, hey, are you open to hearing some feedback on that? But just by me asking permission, I've now engaged a different part of your brain or psyche to be more receptive to that. And then how I deliver it also matters. Those are a couple examples of skills in coaching that are very applicable in life.
Maybe I should start addressing my wife that way. Are you open to feedback? I think the answer should be the same every time. But seriously, that sounds like a great communication strategy that I could use with my kids as well, right? Like, we're talking at them all the time, and how often are they actually listening? So like engaging with them in a different way where it's meeting what they perceive to be something they want to work on, instead of, again, it all goes back to that internal locus instead of the external locus.
And people don't have to be coaching or being coached all the time. That's not the point. The point is this is a complementary thing, right? And so you can be using coaching skills in a relationship with a spouse or kids or whatever. You don't have to be in full-on coaching mode. Like, you could still be a parent or a spouse or a physician-patient relationship, and you can be using a coaching skill. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily coaching them, right? Or being their coach, right?
And through all your coaching experience, you came up with this acronym of practice, right? So tell us about the practice acronym.
Yeah. So and this is probably the simplest way to describe it, is I tell people that they don't need to use my methodology. What I think is they should use a methodology that covers things that will help them be successful. That I think that it should be something that is based on science and research or best practices, and that because best practices are always changing, that methodology should be adaptable and applicable to ongoing life. And so I just incorporated some things that I had learned in coaching, some things that I saw in the medical healthcare space, and what I saw as in my studies of things that would help people be successful. And I just created it into an acronym that to me had a medical punchline to it, practice, right? And then it also has the punchline of actually practicing these things helps you improve your life. And each one of them has a role. Each one of them can be worked on individually. I started off in just the last one, which is energy for personal practice wellness. But you get the point. It's that energy that comes from it comes from physical, mental and emotional energy, and some people would even add a spiritual energy. And those are the things that keep you going. And I started focusing on that and things that I was trying to improve in my general health and well-being. And then I would work on other things. And you can do it individually. When I work with clients, I also show them a bit more complicated way of working with it, because you actually can use the acronym to analyze any goal or any problem. But one of the principles is complex problem solving through simplicity. So when you start doing it, keep it simple.
Great lessons for life. So if people want to take a deeper dive into practice, into surgeon masters, where can we find you online?
Well, they can find us at surgeonmasters.com, and Surgeon Masters is all one word, .com. They can reach out to me at jeff@surgeonmasters.com if they want to email me. We've tried to have a lot of good resources to help other people in a wide areas, kind of like you're doing. And I love seeing the work that you're doing. And I think we complement each other, because I think the key is really hearing this message in a lot of different, coming from a bunch of different angles. They can find out about what we're doing with coaching, what we're doing with physician coach training, and also just what we're trying to build a community of people that are trying to help each other do what we do, and actually do it as long as we want to, rather than until we can't do it anymore.
And as we say, being the best versions of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Jeff Smith, thank you so much for all you do for your patients and for physicians.
Thanks for having me as your guest, and really enjoyed seeing all the great work that you're doing.
And as you say at the end of your show, ciao. Doctors dedicate our lives to caring for others. It's time someone took care of us. Visit patternlife.com to simplify your path to peace of mind. Patternlife.com, simplifying your insurance journey. Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means you either fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please share it, or like it, or comment on a social media post, or write us a 5-star review. Something. It would really help me out. And maybe what you learned from this episode can help someone else too. The views expressed in this episode are those of the interviewer and interviewee, and don't represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting make it sound like I'm talking directly to you. This is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or really any advice. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.